So this Battletech podcast has us building on, I believe, yesterday's vlog, where we were exploring this idea of having plans, going into a battle, going into a game with an operational game plan, and through that, doing the best that you can to force your opponent to react to it. This idea of active versus passive, this idea of make plans or be plans. And yesterday was more theoretical, kind of top-level wargaming. We're going to look at some examples in Battletech, this podcast. Warhammer 40,000, Chain of Command, the idea to use it as a mapping structure so whatever system you're playing, you can come up with that guidepost, that map for yourself. So I'm playing Clans versus Inner Sphere, 12K battle value. And I have to say, I really enjoy playing the Clans, getting into that role-playing aspect there, Jade Falcon. But I'm surprised again and again. Certainly the mechs and the tech are amazing, but 12K battle value Clans really doesn't get you much. I mean, some of these mechs, very potent, but of course, very, very expensive. And compare that to the Inner Sphere, they get a ton of stuff. 12K Inner Sphere gets you a lot of toys on there. So it's an interesting type of game from that perspective. And every time, even knowing this, I'm a little bit surprised at just how few toys I get to bring to the table. So here's the mission. I have an objective, and my opponent has an objective. They are on opposite sides of the table. The mission is you have to make it over to that side of the table, your opponent's side, pick up that objective or get it in a transport, occupy it, grab a hold of it, take it, so no zooming in a locus to pick it up, make it back to your deployment zone, and drop it down. So essentially a recon type mission in there. What's the plan? What's the tactics? And we have three possibilities. We have a draw. So as the game continues, both of our objectives are still in our respective zones. That would be a draw. It could be a win in that if I get my opponent's objective into my zone, I win. If I get their objective into my zone and they get my objective, a little bit of a tongue twister there, into their zone, then it's a tie. So it's essentially very binary yes or no in there, very dynamic. So what is the plan? I've certainly taken some medium and heavy mechs, and I've taken elemental battle armor on there. I'm dividing my forces into two groups. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to have, at the beginning of the game, I'm going to push everything out to the midfield. And the midfield is important in Battletech because whether you're playing on a traditional wargaming table or hex maps, if I'm in the middle of the table or of the map with torso twisting in different facings, I can project out a pretty large radius, right? I can hit stuff ahead of me, I can hit stuff to the left, I can hit stuff to the right. If you tend to push over to one side of the gaming table, let's say I'm over on my right side, then I can radiate out ahead of me, but to the left, I'm not going to have the full range, the full hexes, with all of my weapon systems. Mostly it's going to be the longer range stuff. And especially given that the Clans, for the most part, with the mechs that you take, ERPPCs, Gauss rifles, things like that, extra range with that. I want to take advantage of that. So I'm going to look to push everything to the middle. I'm going to get crossover. I'm going to get support. I'm going to make it, in theory, appear as if I'm pushing directly with everything to my opponent's deployment zone. What I'm going to do mid-game is I'm going to now start to stagger it. I'm going to take the elementals, and depending on the damage and depending on what goes on, the plan is either to break left or break right, or perhaps left and right. I'd really rather not divide my battle armor. You never want to divide your stuff. We'll see what happens, but essentially to take that battle armor and now work on the sides of the table. They're going to be running for that objective, and the reason why I want to shift to the side of the table means now my opponent can physically only engage me directly head-on or from one of the sides. Imagine your units are on the left side of the gaming table or the left side of the hex maps. Physically, you're protected on that left side. There's less angles that someone can come in and approach you from. And if you have faster or smaller units, this tends to focus it more and it allows you to break through and push more. So I'm going to make a run for the objective with my battle armor. I might get it, I might not. The mechs that I have at this point, they're now going to start to pull back to my objective. And I'm going to look to hold that objective. I'm not going to take any mechs. I'm not going to take any mechs, and I'm not going to push any mechs forward. At that point, we're going to pull back, fortify, dig in, and essentially leverage the massive firepower of my mechs versus Inner Sphere to make sure my opponent does not get my objective. I think I have to go into this game feeling like I'm going to go for the win. Certainly, we have to go for the win. Clan honor dictates it. But I need to secure, no matter what, at least a draw. I need to secure my objective no matter what, so at least it's a draw. And against my opponent, if I'm not able to grab it with the elementals, then okay, on there. That's the plan pushing ahead. We'll see how it plays out. Slight modifiers on there, where I have to remember clan honor and rules of engagement. Once I shoot on an honor-bound target, I have to pursue and finish that target off, issue challenges and things. Often when we play Succession Era Inner Sphere and then jump to the clans, it takes me a game or two to kind of remember the role-playing narrative aspects. And the last game, I had one of my summoners shoot at a spider on there. Then I realized, wait, I shot at this spider. I've now engaged it, and I have a very, very potent machine, a very potent mech now, essentially trying to chase down a spider, which at that point is just running like mad. So essentially it took my entire mech out. When I pull back on there and fortify up, that now means any mechs that I'm going to shoot at or targets I'm going to shoot at, because it could be vehicles, it could be other things on there pulling in, they're going to be things going for the objective. So hopefully I don't get kited around the table with that, and hopefully what I do engage, I can destroy pretty quick. Which leads to a sub point, and I'm going to make a note because we have to cover this in another podcast exploring the clans. If you were playing with this role-playing-esque flavor in Battletech, normally we want to engage multiples. We want to engage 2 or 3 mechs on one mech. So if I've got my Battle Master, I've got my Catapult, and I've got my Wolverine, excellent mechs from the starter set, I want to take all 3 of those mechs and blast a single target, whatever that target's going to be. Even if there's multiple targets around, advancing forward, lance versus lance, I want to look and say, okay, leverage all the weapons because they've got redundancy, I've got a hit, there's armor to chew through, focus fire, take that target out on there. The clans don't have that option because once you engage a target, you are limited to whatever the weapon profiles that you have on that mech. So what we find with the clans is you really need to think, what am I going to engage? Based on the weapons of the mech that I have and what I'm engaging, if it's a light mech, a medium mech, a vehicle, some sort of support units in there, do the weapons match where I can take it out relatively quick on there? Where normally if you're engaging 3-to-1, even if you're not matching up the most optimal weapons for the target you're shooting at, an example might be, I want to shoot at an assault mech with PPCs. I'll take medium lasers, but really I want to leverage the 10 or higher damage weapons on a heavy mech or an assault mech. But if I'm combining 3-to-1, if I have 3 mechs shooting into that one mech, that's okay. I've got this support. But with the clans, I need to really, really focus. So I need to keep that in mind. That's actually a great reminder. But this is an example of this idea of making plans or B plans. When you have your list and you know the mission, sit down for a few moments, and it might only be a few seconds before the battle, and start to look and think, okay, what's the plan? What am I going to do? And how am I going to try and leverage this? What's the victory condition that I'm going to push for? But if I'm unable to achieve those victory conditions, how can I at least deny my opponent similar victory conditions?